They had been hunting across the stars for 30 years. Their fleet was made of 7 warships, each one shaped like a dark triangle cutting through space. They were predators. They took what they wanted, they killed who they pleased, and no one had ever stopped them. Hai Fang stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Devourer. He was tall, even for a. His body was covered in thick armor made of bone and chitin, natural protection that his species had evolved over millions of years. His eyes were black and empty, like holes into nothing. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Report," he commanded. His second officer, a younger named Thresh, bowed low. "Hai Fang, we have detected a distress signal. It comes from an uncharted system, 3 hours away at full speed." His mandibles clicked together. This was the sound a made when they were pleased. What kind of signal? Primitive, Hai Fang. Very primitive. The technology is barely capable of reaching between stars. We believe it comes from a young species, one that has only recently learned to travel through space. Walked to the viewing window and stared out at the endless darkness. Young species were his favorite. They were soft. They were scared. They did not know how cruel the galaxy could be, not until the taught them. "Set course," ordered. "All ships we hunt." The 7 warships turned as one and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Space bent around them, and they raced toward the signal like wolves running toward wounded prey. Far away in a system with no name, a ship drifted alone in the cold dark of space. The ship was called the Eternal Dawn. It was not a warship. It was not fast or powerful. It was a colony ship, big and slow, designed to carry people across the stars to find a new home. 12,000 humans lived aboard the Eternal Dawn. Men, women, children, and elderly. They had left Earth 2 years ago because their home planet was dying. The air had become poison. The water had turned bad. The soil could no longer grow food. So they had built ships and launched themselves into the unknown, hopping to find a world where they could start again. Captain Park stood on the bridge of her dying ship. She was 43 years old with short black hair and tired eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. She had barely eaten. There was too much to worry about. "Give me the damage report again," she said quietly. Her chief engineer, a young man named, pulled up the display. His hands were shaking. "Captain, the fusion drive is completely dead. We lost main power 6 days ago. We are running on emergency batteries, but they will fail within 48 hours. Life support is functioning at minimum levels. We have enough air for maybe 1 week, food for 2 weeks, water for 10 days. Closed her eyes. 12,000 people, families, children. They had trusted her to bring them to safety. Now they would all die in the darkness between stars. "The distress signal?" she asked. "Still broadcasting, Captain, but we have received no response. This region of space appears to be empty. No colonies, no stations, no one to hear us." Nodded slowly. She had known this would be the answer. They had traveled too far from the main shipping routes trying to save fuel. It had been a mistake, her mistake, and now everyone would pay for it. She turned to address her bridge crew. There were only 6 of them left. The others were helping to keep the refugees calm. "I want you all to know that I am proud to have served with you. Whatever happens, we face it together." Her crew nodded. Some had tears in their eyes, others simply looked numb. Then the sensor officer, a woman named, suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, I am detecting multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel. 7 vessels. They are large, very large." For one moment hope flared in his chest. Rescue. Someone had heard their signal. Someone had come to save them. Then his face went pale. "Captain, the ship configurations match nothing in our database, but the energy signatures," she swallowed hard, "they match the profile of warships." The hope in his chest turned to ice. Everyone had heard stories about they were the nightmare that parents did not tell their children about because the truth was too horrible. They did not simply kill. They took slaves. They harvested bodies for food. They treated other species like animals to be used and consumed. "How long until they reach us?" asked. Her voice was steady even though her heart was pounding. "At their current speed, approximately 1 hour." Turned back to the viewing window. She could not see the ships yet. They were too far away, but she could feel them coming. Death was approaching, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "Begin evacuation procedures," she ordered. "Move all civilians to the inner compartments, seal the outer sections, and," she paused, "and tell parents to keep their children close." No one asked why. They all understood. But as the crew began to carry out her orders, spoke again. "Captain, there is another contact. A single vessel. It is small, much smaller than the ships. It is approaching from a different vector." Frowned. "Identification." "Unknown. The ship is broadcasting no signals. It appears to be running silent. Hull configuration is," checked her readings twice. "Human, Captain. The ship is human." "Human out here?" "Yes, Captain, and it is moving fast. Much faster than a ship that size should be able to move. It will reach us before the dew." Did not understand. There were no human military vessels in this region. There were no human vessels at all except for the eternal dawn. Who would be out here in the empty dark in a ship that ran silent and moved like a predator? Then the unknown vessel sent a single message. Just 2 words, transmitted in old military code that had learned during her training decades ago. "Hold on." Stared at the message for a long moment. She did not know who these people were. She did not know if they could help. But for the first time in 6 days, she felt something other than despair. She felt the smallest flicker of hope. The small black ship was coming, and somehow knew that they had made a terrible mistake. The black ship docked with the eternal dawn without making a sound. Captain Park had watched it approach on the sensors. The ship moved in ways that should not be possible. It changed direction without slowing down. It stopped instantly without any sign of thrust. Whatever technology powered that vessel, it was far beyond anything had ever seen. She stood at the emergency airlock with 4 of her security officers. They carried old pulse rifles that were designed for dealing with pirates, not alien warriors, but refused to meet these strangers without some form of protection. The airlock cycled, pressure equalized, and then the inner door slid open. 5 figures stepped through. They wore armor that seemed to drink the light. It was black, but not a normal black. It was the black of deep space, the black of a place where no star had ever shone. The armor was smooth and form-fitting, covering every part of their bodies. Their helmets had no visible features. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, curved surfaces that reflected nothing. Security officers raised their weapons. The 5 figures stopped. They did not reach for their own weapons. They did not even seem concerned. Then the leader reached up and removed his helmet. He was human, Korean-like. His face was weathered and lined, maybe 50 years old, maybe older. His hair was cut short, mostly gray, but his eyes were what made breath catch in her throat. They were dark and calm and completely empty of fear. She had seen eyes like that before on soldiers who had witnessed too much death to be afraid of it anymore. "Captain Park," the man said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "I am commander of the Black Watch. We received your distress signal." Lowered her own weapon slightly. "Black Watch? I have never heard of any organization by that name." "You would not have. We do not officially exist." The other 4 figures removed their helmets as well. 3 women and 1 man, all Korean, all with the same empty, calculating eyes as their commander. Gestured to each of them in turn. Sergeant Myra Han, infiltration and close combat. Corporal Juno Lee, heavy weapons and demolition. Private and private tactical operations. Studied them, they were not large people. Myra was actually quite small, barely reaching shoulder. But there was something in the way they moved, the way they held themselves, that made deeply uneasy. They moved like predators, like hunters. Commander said slowly, "There are 7 warships approaching this vessel. They will arrive in less than 1 hour. I have 12,000 civilians aboard. No weapons, no shields, no way to escape. We are aware of the situation." "You brought 5 people." Smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, and it did not touch his eyes at all. "We brought enough." Myra hand stepped forward and pulled a small device from her belt. "Captain, I need access to your ship's internal systems. Blueprints, maintenance tunnels, life support controls, everything." Hesitated. "Why?" "Because in 47 minutes, approximately 200 warriors are going to board this ship. They will expect frightened refugees. They will expect easy prey." Myra's voice was flat and cold. "They will find us instead." Juno Lee was already moving, checking her weapon. It was a large, heavy thing that hummed with power, had never seen anything like it. "What is that?" she asked. "Prototype plasma repeater," Juno said. "Military engineers said it was impossible to make it this small. They were wrong." And had taken positions near the airlock, watching the corridor with silent attention. They communicated with each other using only small hand gestures. No words, no sounds. Turned back to, "Who are you people, really?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was still soft, but there was something underneath it, something old and tired and heavy. "Humanity has been in space for 150 years, Captain. In that time we have met many species. Some were friendly, most were not. They are the worst, but they are not alone. There are slavers, raiders, hunters, species that see humans as food, as toys, as things to be used and thrown away." He paused. "The governments of Earth tried diplomacy. They tried treaties. They tried being peaceful and reasonable. And every time humans died, colonies were destroyed, ships were taken, children were stolen." Myra had finished downloading the ship's blueprints. She was studying them on a small screen, her eyes moving rapidly. "So the governments created us," continued. "The Black Watch. We are volunteers. Every one of us chose this life. We are trained in ways that would break normal soldiers. We know things about alien species that no one else knows, their weaknesses, their fears, the gaps in their armor where a blade can slip through." "You are assassins," said. "We are protectors. We do terrible things so that normal humans do not have to. We become monsters so that 12,000 refugees can sleep safely in their beds." Eyes met hers and saw no shame in them, no regret, only a deep, endless determination. "That is what the Black Watch is, Captain. Humanity's darkest champions. The nightmare that nightmares fear." Myra looked up from her screen. "Commander, I have the layout. They will likely board from airlocks 7 and 12. I have identified 17 and 23 ambush positions." "Good, begin preparations." The 4 Black Watch operatives moved without another word. They vanished into the corridors of the eternal dawn like shadows disappearing at sunrise. Within seconds, could not see or hear any of them. She was alone with. "Commander," she said quietly, "they are 8 feet tall. They have natural armor. They have weapons that can cut through steel, and there are 200 of them." "Yes." "And there are 5 of you." "Yes." Shook her head. "This is suicide." Began walking toward the corridor, his helmet held loosely in one hand. He paused at the doorway and looked back at her. "Captain Park, I have killed since I was 23 years old. I have studied them, hunted them, and learned every secret of their bodies and their minds. My team has fought battles that would make your worst nightmares look like pleasant dreams. We have won every single one." He put his helmet back on. His voice came through the speakers, cold and mechanical. "Tell your people to stay in the inner compartments. Keep the children quiet. And when you hear the screaming start, do not be afraid." "Screaming." Tilted his head slightly. "They will scream, Captain. Before the end they will all scream." Then he was gone, vanished into the shadows like he had never existed. stood alone in the corridor, her heart pounding in her chest. They were coming. 200 warriors who had never known defeat. And 5 humans were waiting to teach them the meaning of fear. Hai Fang watched the colony ship grow larger on his viewing screen. It was a fat, slow vessel, hanging dead in space like a wounded animal. The perfect prey. Scan complete, Hai Fang, Thresh reported. 12,000 life signs aboard, mostly clustered in the central sections. No weapons detected, no shields, their main power is offline. Made a satisfied clicking sound with his mandibles. Prepare boarding parties. 100 warriors through each of the 2 main airlocks. I will lead the first wave personally. Around him, warriors prepared for battle. They checked their weapons, tested their armor, and made the ritual prayers to the hunger gods. For 30 years, they had taken what they wanted from the weaker species of the galaxy. Today would be no different. The boarding ships launched from the Devourer and crossed the short distance to the eternal dawn. They latched onto the airlocks and began cutting through the sealed doors. Metal screamed as plasma torches burned through human steel. Stood at the front of his warriors. He was the largest, the strongest, the most experienced. It was his right to taste the first blood. The airlock door fell inward with a crash. Darkness waited beyond. Frowned, the emergency lights should have been on. Even a dying ship kept its corridors lit. But the passage ahead was completely black, so dark that even eyes could not penetrate it. Forward, commanded. First squad advance. 10 warriors moved into the corridor. Their weapons were raised, their senses alert. They were the best fighters in the fleet, each one having killed dozens of enemies in personal combat. They made it 15 steps before the darkness ate them. There was no warning, no sound. One moment, 10 warriors were advancing through the corridor. The next moment, something dropped from above. Saw only a flash of movement, a blade that seemed to be made of shadow itself, and then his warriors were falling. 3 died before they could turn around. 2 more fell as they tried to raise their weapons. The remaining 5 fired wildly into the darkness, plasma bolts lighting up the corridor in brief flashes of blue. In those flashes, saw her. She was small, impossibly small for a killer, a human female dressed in black armor that made her nearly invisible in the darkness. She moved between the plasma bolts like they were standing still, her blade singing as it found the gaps in armor. 7 seconds. That was all it took. 10 of his best warriors killed in 7 seconds. Then she was gone. She did not run or retreat. She simply vanished, disappearing into a maintenance shaft that had not even noticed. The corridor was silent again. Stared at the bodies of his warriors. His mandibles clicked, but not with pleasure this time, with something he had not felt in many years. Uncertainty. All squads advance, he ordered. Find this human, kill her. 90 warriors pushed into the eternal dawn. They spread out through the corridors, hunting for the shadow that had killed their brothers. They were angry now. They wanted revenge. They did not understand that they were being herded. Myrahan moved through the maintenance shafts like water flowing through pipes. She knew exactly where every warrior was. She could hear their heavy footsteps, smell their strange alien scent, feel the vibrations of their movements through the metal walls. She had memorized the ship's layout in 4 minutes. Commander had once told her that her mind was like a weapon itself, always cutting, always analyzing. She had not understood then. She understood now. They were splitting up, trying to cover more ground. That was a mistake. The first rule of hunting was to never separate from your pack when facing an unknown enemy. She touched the communication device in her ear. Juno, 40 targets approaching Junction C7. They will arrive in 90 seconds. Juno's voice came back, calm and steady. Understood, I am in position. Myra smiled in the darkness. The thought they were the hunters. They were about to learn the truth. At Junction C7, Corporal Juno Lee waited. She crouched behind a support pillar, her plasma repeater resting against her shoulder. The weapon was heavy, almost too heavy for a normal human to carry. But Juno was not normal. The Black Watch augmentation program had made her stronger, faster, more durable than any baseline human. She heard the coming. Their footsteps were loud, confident. They did not bother to be quiet. Why would they? They were the predators here. 40 warriors rounded the corner. They filled the corridor, their massive bodies blocking the emergency lights behind them. They saw Juno. They raised their weapons. Juno fired first. The plasma repeater unleashed a stream of blue fire that lit up the junction like a small sun. The first row vanished, their bodies simply ceasing to exist under the assault. The second row tried to take cover, but there was no cover. The corridor was a killing box, and Juno had positioned herself perfectly. She held the trigger for 6 seconds. When she released it, the corridor was empty. 40 warriors had become ash and smoke. Juno touched her communication device. Junction C7 is clear. Elsewhere in the ship, and were doing their work. They operated as a single unit, moving together through the corridors with perfect coordination. They did not need to speak. Years of training and combat had made them able to communicate with nothing but glances and gestures. They found a group of 12 trying to force open a sealed door. Behind that door were 300 human refugees, huddled together in the darkness, trying to stay quiet. Fired first, dropping the 2 warriors nearest the door. Moved right, her weapon finding targets with mechanical precision. The turn to fight, but they were confused, disoriented. They did not know where the attacks were coming from. 10 seconds later, 12 more lay dead on the floor. Approached the sealed door and spoke in Korean. "Stay inside, stay quiet, you are safe." A child's voice came through the metal. "Are the monsters gone?" "Yes," said softly, "the monsters are gone." He and moved on. There were more to kill. Hai Fang received the reports with growing horror. Squad after squad was being eliminated. His warriors, the finest killers in the Dominion, were dying in the darkness of this primitive ship. "How many?" he demanded. Thresh's voice was shaking. "We have lost 112 warriors, Hai Fang. We have killed no enemies. We have not even seen more than one of them." One, they had only seen one human, the small female with the shadow blade, and yet over half of their boarding party was dead. Had made a terrible mistake. He understood that now. This was not a helpless colony ship. This was a trap, and he had walked directly into it. "Fall back," he ordered. "All warriors fall back to the airlocks." But as his remaining warriors tried to retreat, they found their path blocked. A single figure stood in the corridor ahead of them, unarmed, his helmet removed. Commander smiled. "Leaving so soon, Hai Fang? We have not even begun." Commander stood alone in the center of the corridor. Behind him, the path to the airlock was completely open. In front of him, 75 warriors stood with their weapons raised, ready to fire. Hai Fang pushed through his troops until he stood at the front, his massive form towering over the human. Was confused. He had fought many species across the galaxy. He had seen enemies beg for mercy, run in terror, or fight with desperate courage. But he had never seen anyone stand calmly in front of an army, unarmed, as if they were meeting an old friend. "You are the leader of these shadows?" asked. His voice was careful now. He was beginning to understand that nothing about this situation was what he had expected. "I am commander of the Black Watch," replied. His voice was quiet, conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "And you are Hai Fang. You have led this fleet for 30 years. You have destroyed 47 colonies, taken approximately 200,000 slaves, and killed more than that number. Your name is spoken with fear across 12 star systems." His mandibles clicked with surprise. "You know much about me, human." "I know everything about you. I know the names of your ship commanders. I know the layout of every vessel in your fleet. I know that you broke your left leg in a duel when you were young, and it never healed correctly, which is why you stand with your weight slightly on your right side. Tilted his head. I know that you have a mate and 4 offspring on your. I know which school your youngest attends. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the warriors seemed frozen, unsure how to react to this information. Recovered first, you threaten my family. No, I am simply demonstrating that we know everything about your kind. Your species believes it is the hunter. You believe that you stand at the top of the food chain, that nothing in the galaxy can challenge your dominance. Smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. You are wrong. Big words from a creature standing alone against 75 warriors. Raised his plasma lance. Where are your shadows now, human? They are exactly where they need to be. His eyes moved, scanning the corridor. The walls were solid metal. The ceiling was plain panels with emergency lights. There was nowhere to hide, no maintenance shafts in this section. The human was truly alone. Kill him, ordered. 75 weapons fired at once. The corridor filled with blue plasma fire, so bright that it was impossible to see anything. When the firing stopped, smoke filled the air. The warriors waited, watching for the body to fall. There was no body. Appeared from the smoke directly in front of. He had moved faster than any living thing should be able to move, crossing the distance between them in the brief moment when the plasma fire blocked everyone's vision. His hands found the gaps in his armor, striking points that they had never known were vulnerable. His right arm went numb, then his left. His legs buckled and he crashed to his knees. He tried to speak, but his voice would not work. His entire body had been shut down by precise strikes to nerve clusters that even physicians did not fully understand. Stood over him completely untouched. His armor showed no damage. His expression had not changed. The Black Watch has studied your species for 40 years, said calmly. We have dissected your dead. We have mapped every nerve, every muscle, every weakness in your bodies. We know how to kill in 17 different ways using nothing but our bare hands. We know how to paralyze you, blind you, cause you pain that you cannot imagine. He looked at the remaining warriors, who stood frozen with shock. Their leader, the greatest warrior in their fleet, had been defeated in seconds by an unarmed human. You asked where my shadows are. Let me show you. The emergency lights went out. Complete darkness filled the corridor, so total that even eyes could see nothing. Then the screaming began. Myra hand dropped from a ceiling panel that had been designed to look exactly like the others. Her blade found 3 throats before anyone could react. Juno Lee stepped out of a wall section that had been secretly modified, her plasma repeater humming with deadly energy, and appeared at both ends of the corridor, cutting off any escape. The warriors fought back. They fired their weapons in all directions, filling the darkness with random plasma bolts. But the Black Watch operatives were never where they expected them to be. They moved constantly, striking and retreating, appearing and vanishing like ghosts. Lay paralyzed on the floor, unable to move, able only to watch as his warriors died around him. He heard them calling for help, heard them crying out in fear, heard them screaming as the shadows took them one by one. It lasted less than 3 minutes. When the emergency lights came back on, 75 warriors lay dead on the floor. Only remained alive, still paralyzed, still unable to move. Crouched beside him. You asked what lesson prey could teach a predator, he said softly. Here is your answer. Humanity was never prey. We simply had not yet decided to become predators. He stood and looked down at the High Fang with something that might have been pity. For 150 years your species has hunted ours. You have taken our people, killed our children, destroyed our homes. And for 150 years humanity tried to find a peaceful solution. We tried to be reasonable. We tried to be civilized. His voice grew cold. We have stopped trying. Myra appeared beside him, her blade still wet with blood. "Commander, the ship is secure. All hostiles have been eliminated. Survivors, 4 including this one, all wounded and contained." Nodded. "Good. Prepare an escape pod. Hai Fang has a message to deliver to his people." He looked back down at, whose eyes were wide with horror and disbelief. "You will return to your fleet. You will tell your ship commanders what happened here. You will tell them that the Black Watch protects humanity now. Every ship, every colony, every child." He leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper. "And if your people ever threaten humans again, we will not simply defeat you. We will follow you home. We will learn your worlds the way we learned your bodies. And we will become the nightmare that haunts your species for the next 1,000 years." He straightened and turned away. "Get him out of my sight," and lifted the paralyzed Hai Fang and carried him toward the airlock. His mind was racing. He had led armies. He had conquered worlds. He had never known defeat. Now he understood that there were worse things than defeat. There was fear. And for the first time in his life, Hai Fang of the Dominion knew what it meant to be prey. The escape pod carrying Hai Fang drifted toward the Devourer. Inside the flagship, confusion had turned to chaos. The boarding parties had gone silent. Communications had stopped. And now an escape pod was approaching, broadcasting's personal identification code. Second Officer Thresh ordered the pod brought aboard immediately. When it opened, 2 warriors pulled out and laid him on the deck. The Hai Fang's eyes were open, but he could not move. His body was still paralyzed, though feeling was slowly beginning to return. "Hai Fang," Thresh knelt beside his commander. "What happened? Where are the boarding parties?" His mouth moved. His voice came out as a weak rasp. "Dead, all dead." "That is impossible. We sent 200 warriors." "All dead?" His eyes were haunted, filled with a terror that no had ever seen in him before. "The humans. They were waiting for us. They knew everything. They moved like shadows. They killed without mercy." Thresh looked up at the other officers. None of them understood. 200 of their finest warriors, killed by a species they had always considered weak and primitive. It made no sense. "The fleet will destroy the colony ship," Thresh decided. "We will burn it from space. No survivors." Grabbed his second officer's arm with sudden strength. "No, you do not understand. They want us to attack. They are waiting for it." "Hai Fang, there is only one small ship." "Look at the sensors," screamed. "Look now." Thresh rushed to the sensor station. What he saw made his blood freeze. 12 ships had appeared around the fleet. They had dropped out of faster-than-light travel without any warning, without any of the energy signatures that normally accompanied such arrivals. They were human vessels, but unlike any human ships that had ever seen. They were black as void, angular like blades, and their weapons were already powered and aimed at the warships. The communication system crackled, and a voice filled the bridge. It was calm, quiet, almost gentle, but there was something underneath it that made every on the ship feel cold. "This is Commander of the United Human Territories Black Watch. You came here hunting refugees. You found us instead." On the viewing screen, the 12 black ships held their formation. They did not fire. They simply waited like predators watching trapped prey. "Your Hai Fang carries a message for your Dominion Council. I will deliver it now, so that there is no misunderstanding." His voice grew harder. "Humanity is under our protection. Every colony, every ship, every child. The Black Watch operates in the darkness between stars, and we are everywhere. You cannot see us. You cannot predict us. You cannot stop us. Touch our people again, and we will not simply defeat you. We will follow you to your. We will learn your cities the way we learned your bodies. And we will become the thing that your children fear in the night." There was a pause. We did not want to be this. We wanted peace. We wanted to explore the stars and find new worlds and live in harmony with other species. But the galaxy taught us that peace is not given. It must be taken. It must be defended. So we became humanity's darkest champions. We carry the burden of violence so that 12,000 refugees can sleep safely tonight. We do terrible things so that children on 100 human colonies never have to know fear. Another pause, longer this time. That is our purpose, that is our curse, and that is our warning. Leave now. Return to your territory, tell your council what you saw here today, and pray that we never meet again. The communication ended. On the bridge of the Devourer, no one moved. No one spoke. The 6 remaining warships hung in space, surrounded by 12 human vessels that radiated death. Thresh looked at his high fang. What do we do? Pushed himself to his feet. His body was still weak, but his mind was clear. He had spent 30 years as a predator. He knew when he had become prey. Set course for home, maximum speed. High fang or honor? Our honor means nothing if we are dead. Walked slowly to his command chair and lowered himself into it. I have fought many enemies across this galaxy. I have never lost, until today. He stared at the viewing screen, at the small black ships that had humiliated the greatest predator fleet in the Outer Rim. The humans have changed. They are no longer the soft, frightened species we hunted for generations. Something has awakened in them, something dark and terrible and patient. He shook his head slowly. We poked a sleeping beast, and now it is awake. The only question is whether we are smart enough to leave it alone. Thresh hesitated, then gave the order. All ships retreat, set course for space, maximum speed. The 7 warships turned and jumped to faster-than-light travel. They fled without looking back. 6 months later, the Eternal Dawn reached its destination. The planet was called New Horizon. It was a garden world with blue oceans and green continents, warm and welcoming. The 12,000 refugees looked out the viewing windows and wept with joy. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. Captain Park stood on the observation deck, watching the first shuttles descend to the surface. Children pressed their faces against the windows, pointing at the clouds and the mountains and the endless blue sky. A familiar presence appeared beside her. Commander, still in his black armor, stood silently and watched the shuttles land. "You saved us," said quietly, "all of us. I never properly thanked you." Did not respond for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "We did what we were made to do. Will you stay? Your people have earned the right to rest." Shook his head. "There are other signals, other ships in distress, other predators who have not yet learned their lesson." He turned to face her and saw something in his eyes that she had not seen before. Sadness, weariness, the weight of endless duty pressing down on him. "The Black Watch does not rest, Captain. We cannot. Every moment we stop, somewhere in the galaxy, humans are in danger. Someone is threatening them, hunting them, treating them like prey." He looked back at the planet below. "We stand in the darkness so that they can live in the light. That is our purpose. And when the darkness is gone, when humanity is finally safe." Was silent for a long time. "Then maybe we can rest. Maybe we can set down our weapons and learn to be normal humans again." His voice was soft, almost hopeful. "Maybe one day we can watch a sunset without scanning for threats. Maybe we can sleep without nightmares. Maybe we can remember what peace feels like." He turned and walked toward the airlock where his team was waiting. Myra, Juno, and stood in their black armor, ready for the next mission. "Until that day, Captain Park, we keep watch, we protect, we endure." He put on his helmet, and his voice came through the speakers one final time. "Sleep well tonight. Dream of gardens and children and peace. The Black Watch will guard the darkness." The airlock opened. The 5 shadows stepped through. Their black ship detached from the station and vanished into faster-than-light travel, racing toward the next distress signal. Captain Park watched them go until there was nothing left to see. Then she turned back to the viewing window and looked at New Horizon, at the children playing on the green grass, at the families building new homes, at the beginning of a new chapter in human history. Somewhere out there, In the cold darkness between stars, 5 warriors were fighting so that 12,000 refugees could live in peace. Humanity's darkest champions, standing eternal guard against the night.